back to another episode of Glen and Whiskey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Today we will be drinking, discussing, sipping 1792 Foolproof. We also have a store pick that we also will sample to do a little comparison. But before we get into the bourbon, let's do a little brief history of 1792. 1792 Foolproof has a it's proofed at 125. It actually went into the barrel at 125, and they made sure that when they bottled it, it was also 125. So within the barrel at 125, came out at 125. Well, at least it was proofed down to 125. So first of all, 1792 Foolproof is 25%. Well, rumored. Most of this information you research, you get some of the same information, but it is considered to be 75% corn, 15% rye, and 10% barley, malted barley. Now, at 15% rye, it is not considered a high rye bourbon, but it is approaching that level of rye, which you should be able to detect some of the spice and some of the rye note. You should be able to detect that on your palate. So, first of all, let's look at the colors. A medium amber brown, not very dark, but it does have some nice color to it, which means it should have some. Well, hopefully, it should have some solid flavor. But by being foolproof, we know that that is a rather high proof. I actually love high proof bourbons and whiskeys, so 125 is pretty much up my alley. Anything under 90 proof, I really don't purchase too much, but if it's an aged bourbon, sometimes you have to compensate age for proof. But the higher the proof, the better for me. So, I was going to like this foolproof. So, let's go to the nose of this foolproof. Now, upon initial nosing, you can smell, you can pick the notes of the wood notes. You can tell that this particular bourbon is high proof. You get some wood notes in there, from the barrel, some molasses. There's a tobacco note in there. You also get some of the classic cinnamon, some spice notes. You can smell the sweetness from the corn. It gives you a lot of the classic notes that you would anticipate with a bourbon like Foolproof, because the notes that you are detecting are the notes that when this bourbon was first created. These are the notes that the initial distiller wanted in its purest form. A lot of times, they're proofed down. So these are some of the purest notes as far as with this 1792 Foolproof. Now, of course, there's an entire line of 1792. You have the small batch, the bottle and bind, the single barrel. You also have the 12-year, and you have the sweet wheat. I've had or have all of them. My favorite is the Foolproof, but you can't really go wrong with the 1792 or the 1792 line. And a lot of places you can find store picks. I have a couple of store picks myself of the Foolproof, as well as a store pick from the, I want to say, Bottle and Bond. So they are great whiskeys. The 1792 line, you can, if you're going to a party, grab one of the small batch, and it will It'll be different for a lot of people who are not accustomed to bourbon, but if they're trying to get into bourbon, 1792 is a great stepping point to experience different whiskeys, different bourbons in a various forms. So 1792 is relatively available. Most of the you know the full proof, the single barrel, and the small batch are readily found in most markets. The sweet wheat and the 12 year are a little bit more difficult to find. You may find them on secondary because usually when a store has them, they go rather fast. I was able to pick up one of each maybe a few months ago. I haven't cracked it open yet, but it will be coming soon. So let's get into this palette. That first sip just gives you a lot of the cinnamon, a lot of spice that came from, like I said, from the rye. You should be able to taste those particular notes. This is my first sip of the day, so all those flavors, I'm getting all those flavors, and as I'm tasting it, you can tell that this bourbon is what the distiller intended for its purest form. So a lot of times you may get a whiskey that's watered down, and that may not be the intention of what the distiller originally wanted. But this, you can tell that it's a lot of body, a lot of flavor, not as complex as Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, which can vary in proofs. Usually, most of them are above 125. I haven't picked up the A batch from 2022 yet, but I do have the prior batches. But it's not as expensive, but it is good. Let's see what other notes we can pick up. Also, it actually gets sweeter. You don't get as much, as many spices on the second sip. You get more sweetness, caramel, some molasses. Not as much spice. Finish is a little short. There's also a bitter note in there. If you ever had pecans and you actually chewed on one of the actual shells, you kind of get that note as well. It's a little bitter note towards the end of the palate. Even though this is the proof is 125, it doesn't really drink like a 125. Actually, it drinks more like a 110, 105, but it does have a lot of flavor. It isn't watered down, and that's one of the primary things when you are drinking whiskey. More experienced whiskey drinkers, or you want to move up in proof, you want something that's going to give you full body, where you can experience various different flavors and various different notes. Let me get another dram. Actually, funny story is last week I was doing bourbon hunting at one of the various stores that I hunt bourbon, and one of the guys he knows that I've been looking for some a particular bourbon, and he called me to the register, and he actually gave me a bottle of 1792, a store pick bottle and bond that I actually sipped on last week. Well, actually last weekend it actually was pretty good. So it's funny, I was doing this video and I actually got a bottle and bond store pick, and this is And this is 100 proof. Of course, bottled and bond mean it's 100. This 1792 really gives you classic note. It really gives you pure bourbon. Especially if you're trying to move up and experimenting and just moving up in the whiskey world. You're going a little bit deeper. This 1792 is a great stepping point once you've kind of gone through a lot of the lower end or the $20-$30 bourbon. Like I said, the 1792 isn't very expensive, relatively speaking, but like I said, I do recommend you try this 1792. Now, what we're gonna do now is compare that to the single barrel foolproof, and see how it differs. Let me clear the palate. Okay. You get a lot of the same classic notes from the 1792. You get a lot more ethanol with the regular 1792 foolproof. This one is a little bit more muted. Still classic bourbon notes that you would expect. Sweet up front. You don't get as much spice as you would or as you did from the original 1792. It's a little sweeter actually. I don't taste a lot of those some of the notes. I don't really get that tobacco note. Kind of dries out the palate a little bit more. I don't get that note, that pecan note. I get the pecan note, but I don't get that bitterness that you get in the original 1792 foolproof. But it is good. So comparing the two, overall 1792 line is excellent. It doesn't matter. A lot of people prefer the small batch. Like I said, small batch is great as well, but I prefer the foolproof, just more proof, a little bit more body, a little bit deeper. And actually, the finish is a little longer on this. Like the finish is still going from the 1792 store pick. Now remember, store picks vary. You have someone sampling to pick a particular barrel, so one store pick may be better than another one. So this is for this particular store pick, like I said, that I was sent from a good friend in the Memphis area. So overall, 1792 is a great line, and I definitely recommend you try it. It's good. It's a good value. A lot of different lines that you can choose from the bottle and bind to the small. From the bottle and bind to the small batch to the foolproof to the single barrel, as well as the 12-year, in which we will probably do the 12-year review soon, as well as the sweet wheat. Thank you for joining Glenn and Whiskey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and have a wonderful day.